Hello, and welcome to another edition of Trauma in the Tub. I am your segment host, Mo Davis. We are talking about cultural trauma today. Now, this also applies to religious trauma, I guess. So, cultural, religious, the whole 9 yards. As you can see, I am caring for my hair at the moment because I don't do it often enough. And it is really important during your trauma healing that you take some time to heal yourself through some self-care and self-love, because nobody's going to do it for you. Cultural trauma and religious trauma and all the traumas that fall under that kind of window where it involves family and community and all that jazz. The biggest problem with that is there's such a disconnect between what is happening to you and what is happening within the community. And what is happening to you could be as wrong as humanly imaginable, but because we are so stuck on the thought of what is right, we continue to do it. It doesn't matter how much you suffer. It doesn't matter how much you scream to stop. It's going to keep going, and no one's going to rescue you, because typically as well in cultural, religious traumas, there's usually a circle of people who like to hide what is happening to you within that circle to kind of preserve the image of what is happening to you. And that's like a whole other level of isolation, especially if it's happening to you at a young enough age where you end up being thoroughly disconnected from what is actually reality. And you have no actual concept of what is right or wrong. And so you start to do a lot of things to just try and survive the circumstance. And the circumstance surrounds you. This also like extremely applies to people who, let's say, LGBTQ2S+, who are in foreign countries, who, are literally existing against the law because they're gay. That's problematic. Also, ignore that ugly thing over there. I'm renovating an old house. It's really important that as you age, you don't take that anger out on the wrong people, and that you check your humility. I hate to say this because there's already so much pressure and shame because you are traumatized, but if you don't want to lose the last few things that you have, you're going to want to get help. You're going to want to check yourself, and you're going to want to not fight the people who love you, even if they don't necessarily understand or stand with what you're doing, what you believe in, what you are speaking out against. It's not their fault that you had a shitty upbringing and probably a family that didn't have your back, probably no safety growing up. It's really not their fault. And so when you get angry with them because they can't understand, or they can't relate, or they don't agree, or they don't see black and white, but rather see shades of gray, which is the truth. The truth lies in shades of gray. It doesn't lie in black and white. And so if we lie in shades of gray, but we are traumatized as hell, and we want to live in black and white because that is how we survived for so many years, was identifying what is safe, what is danger. Because even within our own safety circle, there was so much danger that our existence was threatened on a regular basis. You need to check yourself, or you're going to lose the little love and comfort that you have. I know this from experience, unfortunately. You need to get help, and help is expensive. Help is really expensive, especially when you go in and you dive into your trauma and you decide you are done with the medication and you are done with, the systemic just gaslighting constantly. And you choose to dive into the most painful parts of your recovery. And I'm using a lot of terms that come from the addiction world, because essentially we become vulnerable and we become validation addicts because we have not been validated at all growing up. We don't know how to validate ourselves properly, even though we think we do and we say we do. We still end up not validating ourselves appropriately by neglecting our own self-care oftentimes and becoming kind of like sacrificial lambs, which is really not nice, because then you act like a sacrificial lamb. You don't get the result you think you're going to get, because many of us from cultural traumas are also coming from cultures that teach us, especially females, to be sacrificial lambs. And so you're sacrificial lamb and life doesn't end up the way you plan for it to be, or people don't treat you the way you wished they treated you, or just life sucks and bad things happen. You are going to go, and you're going to go from the fawning phase, which is just hiding because you're just consenting to everything, even though it's beyond your boundaries. And when you even assert your boundaries and they're not respected, you do not declare that your boundary is not being respected, and therefore there's no recognition of the violation of your boundary, and therefore it's assumed that it was a flexible boundary, and you set kind of a really bad tone. And all of a sudden you become this angry, savage monster who spits grenades out of their mouth to the people that you love the most. And it's horrifying, because even when you catch yourself doing it and you don't want to do it, you're still doing it. You can't stop it, because you've just hit this point where you've exploded so much, and that kid is just in a tantrum of flipping rage. Just don't do it. And I get it. Your circumstances growing up were ones that were extremely unsafe, far beyond the norm, because again, you have an entire society hiding the abuse that it is justifying doing to you by saying that you're an apostate, or that you are not listening to the rules, or you are declaring that you're against the culture, or whatever. There's extremism everywhere, where it goes as far as, life threats on your life, death threats. You have to choose what you want in your life. You are traumatized, and you have spent most of your life getting a really bad series of events just constantly hitting you in the face, right? You have to decide if you're going to live the rest of your life fighting them, or if you're going to live the rest of your life happy. Because it can't be both. And as much as many of us want to be the bearers of social justice, the fact is, as strong as we think we are often confusing our anger with strength. And that is a huge problem. So thank you for tuning into another Bathtub TED Talk, or really, conversations with Mo Davis about trauma in the tub. Be kind to yourself.